Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Susan Lindner, your host of Innovation Storytellers, where we talk about the stories that get your big innovation to its appropriate finish line. And we can't do that work, that really hard work, without having really good research behind us. All great innovation starts off with a fantastic idea that then becomes validated by really important research and tapping into the resources to make sure that we're following down the right path as we go through our MVPs, we decide to scale, and we really create great successes from the products and services we're looking to make. Now, it's very rare that I wind up bringing folks on the show who wind up having a very particular product that works for the innovation community, only because I want to make sure that I protect this lovely little community space for our innovators and the stories that they get to tell. But sometimes the intersection of great innovation and great products that us as innovators can use winds up showing up on my doorstep. And that's why I wanted to invite my friend from NotedSource to join me today. This is going to be a conversation around how we create great innovation, how we get the right tools in place to do it. And we're also going to hear from one of NotedSource's favorite customers, because they've been able to transform their own innovation pipeline using NotedSource. So without further ado, I want to introduce you first to Joia Spooner-Fleming, who is an R&D and innovation consultant who helps mid-sized consumer products companies answer the question that comes before everything else. What should we actually go after, and why will it win? After 25 years of leading R&D and innovation inside of global Fortune 500 companies like P&G, where she grew iconic brands like Gillette and Braun, and SharkNinja, where she led the Ninja brand across multiple categories, Joia brings operator-level rigor to a problem most consultants arrive at way too late. She works at the upstream end of innovation, helping leadership teams move from uncertain opportunity to a portfolio with a real evidence base behind it, and then building that AI native capability to keep that intelligence running. Today, Joia leads her own consultancy and advises a curated portfolio of AI native consumer products innovation platforms. And by the way, she holds a degree from a little known university called MIT in chemical engineering. Joia, thank you for joining me. And also Kofi Gyashi, who is the founder and CEO of NotedSource, an AI-powered R&D platform that helps leading enterprises accelerate research, develop new products, and streamline external collaboration. Drawing on his background as a research scientist at Vanderbilt University and as the VP of Innovation at Citigroup, another little startup that we love here, Kofi recognized this systemic friction that slows corporate R&D teams from identifying the right external partners to managing contracting, payments, and full collaboration lifecycle. NotedSource was launched to solve that problem at scale, leveraging AI to give enterprise teams the tools to move faster from insight to impact with minimal resistance. By merging scientific rigor with corporate strategy, NotedSource is reshaping how the world's largest institutions leverage external intelligence to solve complex technical challenges and drive growth that all of us need today. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to have you both here today because we really need to dig into it. So let's start from the very beginning. Kofi, why don't I start with you? How did you step into the innovation world? Nobody walks into the innovation house through the front door. How did you find yourself there?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. NotedSource came about from a bunch of past experiences in innovation and research from different areas. So my family is in academia, and early on in my career, I was a researcher at Vanderbilt University. But then I transitioned into the private sector, where, as you had mentioned, I was VP of Innovation at Citigroup, where we worked on a range of projects, ranging from material science projects to working with behavioral psychologists, chemistry projects, working with data scientists. And in that role, I was able to really understand how companies do the things, their core capabilities and their core functions, but also look at new capabilities and leverage external partners to enter into new spaces. And so that was really my role, trying to bring my disparate different types of experience within the role, and then identify new research, new information, new patents and expertise so that we can build new products. And so ultimately, that's how I came into the innovation world. And then as far as NotedSource, we ultimately created that to help connect all types of researchers together, and then also accelerate the time it takes for a company to go from initial concept to either validation or sometimes rejection of the concept or product development, ultimately helping that company save time and money. So yeah, I'd say from academia to research and development is kind of how I got into innovation.
Yeah. And Joia, you started off as a chemical engineer. How did you
Yes, I
find
did.
your way to innovation?
Susan, first, thank you for having us on the show. I've enjoyed listening to your podcasts and all of the nuggets and insights from you and the other guests. It's an honor to be with you today.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
yes, you can blame Gary Hawley, my 10th grade science teacher. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. Gary saw something in me in chemistry class. He said, "Do you know there's this thing called engineering?" I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, that's when you combine like, math and science fundamentals, engineering together to like solve problems and help people." I'm like, that sounds good. So I switched from wanting to be a lawyer to wanting to be in STEM, went to MIT, and I was surrounded by really bright people. And we were working on really hard problems that matter in the world and to society and individuals. And then I went to P&G and began doing that again. And so I was around great people, working in teams, solving hard problems. And that's still my equation for why I'm an innovator, making a difference in people's lives by solving hard problems and doing it with other great people around me.
Yeah. And how hard is like that newness factor, when you're really trying to bring something new into the market? Like we talk a lot on the show about incremental innovation versus kind of the breakthrough. Was that part of your motivation, is wanting to be on like the cutting edge of cool new stuff?
Cool new stuff, as long as it's better and it matters. I didn't want to just be associated with the new and the shiny object, but around making experiences and products better for people. And being inside a company, doing that in a way that also creates value. And that's probably why I did it in corporate America rather than in an academic setting. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think just real quickly, I think one thing that's interesting when you're working in innovation is if you are in those roles, you can, develop new things on a somewhat regular basis, and those things aren't just developed in a theoretical sense, but become new products that you get into the hands of consumers. And so, from an innovation standpoint, that's one of the things that I found interesting is that whatever you're working on, number one, ideally it's novel and different, and like Joya said, it's hopefully better. But then secondly, you can actually see the end result with someone using it.
Yeah. I mean, P&G is impacting billions of people every day.
That's right. And yet it comes down to deep understanding of problems they have that are acknowledged and problems consumers don't even know they have. And the desire to get close to those folks and understand their lives and what's important to them and what motivates them, and not just solve the functional, job to be done for them, but also the social and emotional jobs and needs they have. And fortunately, I've been part of two very, large companies that are really great at that. And that's been a privilege in my career.
Yeah. I still think it's a shock to me that I'm swiffing, that is like a verb that is part of my Saturday morning lexicon. And then I'm like, here I am doing something that didn't exist in my mother's generation, right? I think we just called it mopping. But like,
Yes. And
but
who
I am,
knew it would be so satisfying to turn it over and see all that dirt and dust?
Yes.
yeah,
Oh, so satisfying. Yeah.
that's right. And they go, and you just basically wind up going like, oh crap, I had no idea my apartment was this disgusting. Thank you so much for letting me know. And there's something we can do about it, which is great. That's funny. I never actually thought about the satisfaction element of turning that thing over.
I know I did a good job and it was
Yeah, yeah.
easy.
It's funny, as an anthropologist, that's always been an aside, that look at how the Swiffer was marketed in the United States versus how it's been marketed in Italy, right? There are like whole books about how saves time, right, was the greatest sales pitch of the Swiffer for people in the United States who didn't want to spend their whole weekend cleaning. Whereas I believe it was Italian women who said they prided themselves on having a 4-hour clean. And that was their personal time. That was their alone time. That was their sense of like a self-gratification that I have a beautifully clean home. And so when you try to sell it at, you can get that done in 15 minutes, you take away the value, the inferred value of the cleaning. And so the Swiffer pitch in Italy is a deeper clean, a better clean, a more thorough clean. Like it's the last check you do after all your cleaning to make sure it's spotless. So that woman actually wants hers to come up empty so that she can prove that all the other cleaning she's done is fantastic. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, these differences by market, by consumer matter so greatly. Most
By
recently, I was on a
story.
project, yeah, with the story, and I was at SharkNinja on a program where something that was an attribute of the project that was absolutely great in the US was not great in France or Germany in a way that was actually unanticipated. But we learned that lesson. I mean, there's a story I want to tell today on the podcast. It's
Yes.
one of my favorites, and it's exactly about that, how you can get it wrong with the consumer, even though you're pretty self-satisfied with the product and you think you've got a winner.
Well, let's start off with the lesson learned this time rather than the great success story. Tell us about
Yeah.
a product innovation that you've worked on where the story didn't quite fit.
All right. So here it is. So I'm in Mexico City. I'm on a
Beautiful.
rooftop with a consumer and we're watching her do her laundry, right? And she's spending hours up there washing, rinsing, wringing, hanging and line drying in the sun, because of course that's how you can get good bleaching in the clothes. And we developed a product that, like you said, we thought was certain it would transform her life because it was going to dramatically save time. It was going to save water, which is a scarce resource that people have to spend money on. And it was going to make the whole process faster and more efficient. And we watched her try the product out, right? And she's genuinely impressed. And, the product worked exactly as we designed it. So I'm feeling pretty self-satisfied as part of the team, the internal team, right? And it's like, well, would you like to keep the bottle then? We ask this woman, and she says, no, gracias. Oh, whoa, right? And I was confused. So I say, well, why? And she explained something that stopped me completely, but is near and dear to your heart, Susan, right? Is doing her laundry is how she served her family. Yeah.
Right.
And it was over too fast, then she wouldn't feel she'd done a good job. And what would she do with the rest of her day and all that time anyway, right? And so we had this technically brilliant solution to a problem she didn't actually have. And we made her an afterthought in her own life story.
Yes.
And so we had to go back and rebuild the narrative entirely. And we had to make her the hero again. And where the product was her partner and mentoring her in the journey, and the outcome was her pride and not just the efficiency. And it's the same technology and the same product, but wrapped up and told in a different way that landed much better with that consumer. And so that's I think the essence of good storytelling. It doesn't need to be in a waterfall way. It doesn't need to come late in the product development cycle. It really needs to be like integrated in and started early with the creative people involved together with product folks. And it's been codified in lots of different ways. One of my favorite ways is my friends over at Untapped Innovation and the way they do it. But the consumer has to be the hero, and the product is how we get to the outcomes. And if you get it backward, it doesn't really matter how great the science is. The innovation will probably fail in the market.
Yeah, and interesting. I love that story, Joia. And I think like separately, a somewhat similar experiences. A lot of the banks look to create credit cards that were heavier, right? Because it would give the sense that it was a much more premier luxury credit card. And so that was actually some of the work that I was involved in, where it was like working with the material scientists to see what sort of things need to go into those. But then what you also end up realizing is that these things can change by generation, right? And so for Gen Z, having a credit card or having a physical card is less important to them. And so a lot of the work that went into developing it becomes less relevant to a whole new set of consumers and buyers. And so I feel like just incorporating that in the process at the very beginning is always important, just to see who are we selling to, who are we trying to innovate for, and are they going to appreciate some of these changes, or do we need to look at other things? So I think it's important, whether it's a cultural, it's a generational, or anything else.
Yeah, especially when you're paying with Apple Pay, right? You're like, what good does a credit card do at this point when you're just whipping out your phone? Your phone is your cachet, right? In some cases. Yeah, you're kind of reminding me, because recognizing that the listener or the customer has to be the hero of the story is so critical. I was doing work in HIV back in the 90s and with sex workers and their customers in brothels. And so we were trying to help women protect themselves from getting HIV. 1 in 6 sexually active people where I worked was HIV positive. And so they told us to be the hero of their story, they needed to be in control of their own destiny. That's how they phrased it. And I thought, I'm just a public health worker. How do I put you in control of your own destiny? But it's really such a fundamental wish, right? So we created all of these, this girl from the Bronx, right? Chicken raising, pig raising, duck raising in rural Thailand on the border with Myanmar, but also entrepreneurial skills training, secretarial skills training, computer training. This was in the 90s, right? I mean, my office had one computer at the time, but we wanted to provide them with these kinds of skills. What we found though was like we couldn't get them to implement the public health changes, condom use, clean needles, et cetera. We didn't have an alternative for them to fill the time. If you were going to leave sex work, we had to make sure that we could fill it with something that was as gratifying. So I'm thinking about your ahí en la Ciudad de Mexico on the roofs of these buildings and going, how can we help her fill her time now? That part of this process goes, wow, there's more to life than laundry.
I was up there on that roof thinking you could take dance lessons. Geez, what would I
Let's do
do with
salsa up
this
here. What are
time?
we waiting for?
Yeah.
Perfect.
But it's true. When we went to the Philippines on that project, it was a similar story. And the woman that we were working with, learning from, a consumer, she wanted to just enjoy the process even more of doing the laundry. And she wanted to be more indulgent. And so we really needed to look at optimizing the perfume levels in the product because she didn't want it like over and done really quickly. She just wanted to be able to enjoy it more in this hot, humid environment. And it would happen to be near the family's, latrine lab space. So it wasn't always, a great olfactory experience. And so we had to work really hard to make some technical breakthroughs to make that happen for her. And even with that, you know what the story was? It was with all the money you'll save using less rinse water, knocking the suds out of the detergent sooner, etc., you can afford to buy your family a sack of rice. That's how much you'll save. Again, so
Wow.
we're providing for the family, we're communicating the value,
In their terms.
packaging it. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Enduring lesson for me. You could see I'm a little emotional about it. I still remember being with her doing laundry, back in 2007.
So you're a chemical engineer and an anthropologist. I love it.
That's a bit of a reach, but thank you. But what you said about people is true, I think, of our employees too, isn't it? Or any change or initiative or transformation. We need to take that same curiosity, I think, inside our companies. And as a technical person, that's where I kind of fell down initially, is not seeing, it was very easy to diagnose exactly in an organization what we need to go do differently to produce, better innovation outcomes, right? Or what capabilities we need, are the right strategies in place. But without acknowledging people, hearing their motivations, involving them. Like we know the lessons from Simon Sinek or Daniel Pink or whoever, right? People, pushing for change without honoring what's important to others. That was a lesson for me. And what helped me make the shift was treating folks in the room exactly like we would a consumer.
Because they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that key word that both of you started this conversation with, which was providing value. The question is, are we creating a story that summarizes the value on the listener's terms, not on ours, right? So if the value is, I want to luxuriate in my laundry, or if the value is, I want to save money so my spouse can go out on a Saturday night, or money that I can buy books for my kids and a sack of rice. That's a huge difference. So let's talk a little bit about how we get to this innovation and fueling the innovation pipeline around R&D, because thinking about how we fill this pipeline, how we create these innovations and get the information that we need in order to get to these great stories. Talk to us a little bit about how you did it at Ninja, and then also how you use the NotedSource platform to get it done. I'm really curious to kind of like hear about it in action. Kofi, and maybe you tell us a little bit about how it got started, this interaction.
Yeah, so I met Joia a couple of years ago, and I think, and she can speak a little bit more towards her experience within the large organizations. But what we notice with her work and with other companies that we work with is that the process, the system to identify an external partner generally is pretty manual, right? So either you're looking at your existing network of partners, you're going to conferences and meeting them ad hoc and interacting with them and hoping that you can strike a partnership that works out, or you're spending time just Googling and trying to find the right solution or partner to work with. And so by doing that, it can take a long time to go through that process. It can take a long time to then identify the right partner, go through contracts, discuss, payments and all the kind of minutia and administrative work that if I'm in innovation, I don't necessarily want to focus on. And so that's how we met. But I can let Joia speak to her experiences in terms of that open innovation world.
Yeah.
Sure. I think, open innovation. Yeah, I was around during the A.G. Lafley days at P&G when A.G. made a bold declaration, maybe not quite as bold as Kennedy and the moon, but, he said, let us have at least half of our innovations come from outside, which is a remarkable ambition at the time. And you mentioned Swiffer, by the way, and others. It did lead to a culture change to have an external focus, be part of ecosystems, recognize that good ideas can come from anywhere. And of course, now with technology having changed as it has, the ability to do that is even more possible at scale globally in a way that just wasn't possible before, right? With AI and other advances. And we're all connected across the globe. And yet, how do I tap into those best minds? What I admired about SharkNinja was how fast speed to market, right? How fast SharkNinja is able to see a consumer need and respond to it in the market with innovation and at scale. $7 billion company growing at 20% a year when most consumer product companies are growing at 2 to 3% a year, and it's growing that way for over a decade. And great work from hardworking people. And when speed matters, and when we're trying to de-risk from idea to launch, we're going inside of a year on a device, not software.
Right, on hardware. That's no joke.
And all due respect, and the time is now. And at SharkNinja, every day, every hour mattered. And the ability to tap into the right answers to de-risk whatever kind of aspect of the proposition was, kind of in the way along the funnel was expected. It was expected of the culture to do that. Call up whoever tomorrow. Why? Call them now. Call them at, what is it? It's 1:00, Susan. Call them when I hang up with you. How do I tap into the expertise I need on a problem with maybe no prior relationship with someone? How do I do that in 15 minutes? Well, NotedSource made that possible. And if you can imagine in a company where there's thousands of employees, have a mindset and a cultural mandate to solve problems in that way, recognizing that great ideas can come from anywhere, then you need a way to do that at scale and more these days in an AI agentic way, right?
Yeah. So tell us a little bit how you did it. Can you give us an example on one of the products that you were working on and how the NotedSource connection made a difference?
Sure. I mean, not in specific terms, of course, we respect confidentiality, but yeah, we had a program, and I wasn't working with Kofi at the time, but we knew of each other. As I said, let me shoot you the problem statement. I shoot him the problem statement. He sends me back 10 experts in, I don't know, 19 minutes, maybe fewer. Joy, any of these look good? Any of these look good? I grab the head of R&D. I grab one of the people from my team. Sit down. Let's look through these files. Any of these profiles look like they could be useful to us? Well, geez, we'd love to set a conversation with, A, B, C doesn't look relevant. D looks good. Well, great. Let's do that tomorrow morning.
Joy, can you define maybe what the problem sounded like? What was it? What did it sound like?
In this case, it was, I'm looking for someone with domain mastery in a certain scientific discipline to address a regulatory shift in the market and a need to reformulate a product to comply with that new regulatory legislation that was coming.
So how do I suck up the pet hair without sucking up the pet or something like that? There you go.
And then also future-proof against that, right? Not just reacting to that one shift, but how would I then design a new platform that protects me for those kinds of directions and more? And if that expertise is not in the core and doesn't reside in the organization, SharkNinja has a mandate to grow by entering more and more new categories and not be confined by the internal mastery, but tap into whatever's needed in order to enter a new category with the right capabilities. Most of that's probably going to be outside your company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's interesting is some of the largest companies in the world do this, right? So obviously SharkNinja and P&G, but we also work with one of the largest apparel brands in the world. And I think one of the things that we've noticed is they're able to tap into external partners and expertise, even when they're looking to enter a new segment or market, right? So first, we have a tool, an AI tool that allows them to go through research publications, patents, industry partners, but then it gets that entire research team up to speed on that topic. But then, as Joia mentioned, trying to identify those people that they can speak with, right? So you can go through the research yourself, you can read the publications, read kind of the insights that are generated by AI, but sometimes you want to talk to the expert on that space. You want to talk to the person who knows about this regulation or who knows about this industry or market or who knows about this new technology and ask them questions as opposed to solely focusing on what the model tells you. And so that's what we were able to see at SharkNinja and Microsoft and all other companies that we work with.
It's
Yeah,
fascinating.
I can, Kofi, I can tell you a story about a time when I wish I had that. I still wake up with this one because I think this product was a winner, but it doesn't matter what I think or what anyone else arguing around the table and debating it thought. We needed to tap into the right know-how. I wish I had someone that had kind of done this kind of what it was it was an innovation that was so good it was probably going to disrupt our core. So maybe we had over designed it. It was that good that we were kind of like worried about how much it might cannibalize the core. And we kept kicking that around the table, but we never really did anything to de-risk or find out if we were right about that fear and that assumption. And I think it'd been one thing if we had data and evidence and we made a strategic call to end the program. But these ones, they get delayed, they get de-resourced, they're shelved, they're still sort of lingering, but there's like not quite all the nails in the coffin. Sometimes they Lazarus back out. You know what I'm talking about. And if
Hey,
I think we had
Lazarus back out. My project is biblical. It's coming back from the dead. I can't tell you how many chief innovation officers tell me they have like a little secret slush fund of projects that they just can't let go of. Like you never know when something's going to pop up. I had the chief innovation officer from Corning Glass on, and they had developed a paint that had specific tiny invisible glass beads in it that was antimicrobial. And so you could put it on the walls in very humid locations, especially in the subtropical areas, right? To stop infection from growing on the walls, mold from growing on the walls, because it was instantly antibacterial. But it turned out it might have been better as a spray on surfaces rather than a paint on the walls. So they still haven't found the perfect sweet spot for this amazing formula that stops bacterial growth in all different kinds of places that you wouldn't necessarily expect it. And that slush fund still exists for that product to figure out someday it's going to hit. Someday it's going to hit.
and he just can't let it go. And you want it to be for the right reasons that you finally kill it or shelve it. And in this case, I really do think it was more fear. And if we had some of the expertise in the room, I imagine we could have made a better quality decision about that. And that's what I often ask my clients is like, okay, you're big. This is a big one. You're a little bit nervous. I get it. And it's like, have you asked the right questions of the right people? Do you know that's a real risk with data, or do you just sort of have a feeling?
Yeah. And now you have a partner where you could actually get that data. But like in your mind, you're going like, it's Kodak's digital camera.
All
Don't
over
leave
again.
it there. Right?
Yes,
Exactly.
yes. Or it's some other internal kind of PTSD situation that you have, right, from a past project. Yeah. And we carry
Right.
those. Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, mentioning some of that, Joya is obviously an expert in her own right, and I think one of the things you notice a lot of innovation, new product development, R&D teams do have a ton of that expertise in-house on plenty of topics, but sometimes it does take some time, or it does take some external partners or researchers or new technologies to validate some of those ideas and determine whether we should keep them or we should move on from them, whether that time horizon is 6 months, 1 year or 3 years. I think one of the things you mentioned about sometimes teams holding on to something, we definitely see some of our customers being able to determine whether they want to, shelve an idea like completely, or whether they want to fully invest in something after they've just held it on to it for a long time. And so by leveraging NotedSource, they can actually decide, make a decision, go, no go, one way or the other after they've really vetted that topic. So yeah, definitely see that as well.
Where do you get the data from, Kofi? Where are you drawing from to get all of these noted sources in NotedSource?
Yeah, so we've spent years building up that network of researchers, vendors, suppliers who also bring on their new technologies. We also have relationships with publishers to create this proprietary data source, so that whenever you're going through our leveraging our AI, for example, there's some information that you wouldn't be getting if you used a general kind of model like a ChatGPT or Gemini, because everything is really focused on the research, on patents, as well as on the work that our network has built up and developed. And so it was, I'd say it was a year's worth of collecting that, and it's still continuing to grow by demand. So anytime a new project comes on, we'll get, more researchers, more experts, more new technologies that then can feed into kind of the ecosystem of innovation for all companies.
And what do you think? And I imagine there are all different kinds of firewalls and protections so that P&G doesn't know what SharkNinja is doing and vice versa.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was probably when NotedSource started, was the first question everyone would ask: Are there kind of our IP protections, right? If you're talking about the innovation or R&D teams, those are the most IP sensitive groups, because they're working on things that are going to hopefully make the company even more competitive in the market. And so even sometimes signaling to the market that you're about to do something might give too much away, right? So we even have, so we have a lot of our customers ensuring that they're not just signaling we're about to enter this space, so all of our competitors need to be aware of it. We have controls in place so that, number one, if you're having conversations, the external partner can be blind to you and other like SOC 1, Type 2, SOC compliance measures, just to ensure that there's no information leakage, regardless of who we work with. So we work with companies that are direct competitors of each other, but ultimately working on different things and ensuring that privacy remains.
And that makes a difference in speed, right? Because, you could look at any company's website and you'll see there's probably an open innovation tab, and there'll be some kind of connect developer. So there'll be some way of kind of seeking answers or experts to problems. But, when you're publicly disclosing it, the granularity at which you do that, the description of the kind of solution you're seeking, all of that's going to be pretty safe and pretty conservative. It's also often slow and outdated. So the ability to act for what you need confidentially, again, at scale, on demand, not just like Joia knows a couple professors at MIT and someone else knows a guy at Michigan and someone else knows a gal down at Ole Miss, is I think what the disruption is here with NotedSource.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like if you look at one individual researcher, they have their systems and their processes, but if you expand it to a team of 700 or 1,000 or 5,000 innovation adjacent or within employees, by them all leveraging tools that accelerate the time it takes for them to understand a topic or to work on a topic or to create a new product, you can really shrink the time it takes to do that, save a lot of money from a company standpoint, and then ideally generate significant revenue by getting that product out to market faster, right? At the end of the day, a lot of innovation teams, you want to get that thing out to market as quickly as you can and hopefully start making money from that too.
At P&G, we used to say a month is $1 million. A month is $1 million, And even if it's not academic, you might be like calling your favorite 3 suppliers that you either already work with or, so you've got to get beyond the blinkered view and as fast as possible and as cheaply as possible now to compete and win, because speed is the advantage.
Right. So is NotedSource also viable for kind of trend research and like what's trending? You were talking about future-proofing some ideas. How do you help people look into the future of, okay, this might work today, but what about tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say, we work with companies who are looking at new trends, new technologies, new markets to enter, and also kind of where they sit within the ecosystem. So one of our customers was looking at a space that they thought, or a new technology that they thought might completely disrupt what they do and potentially make them a bit redundant. And so what do they need to do from a development standpoint to get ahead of this? What are the technologies that they need to be aware of outside of this one that they were looking at? And what else they would need to bring in to their organization to properly not just defend this, but also maybe build alongside it and develop. So in terms of that sort of landscaping, we help those companies develop market landscapes, new technology reports, and also identify certain vendors and new technologies that they can implement within their organization. So sometimes it's company looking to work with an expert, sometimes it's company looking to identify a new technology, sometimes it's company looking to understand where they are from a technology space and how they should capitalize on their current position. So yeah.
Mm.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like I could, if I'm back at Gillette, a few years ago, maybe we're thinking about, young people who have acne, and there's probably a lot of biological and skin related phenomena in that condition. And yet a young teen or person with acne wants to put their best self forward, and they may need to shave over skin that has that kind of condition. Yeah. But that may not be expertise that Gillette has in-house, right? Or broader Procter at an enterprise level. So then maybe we want to tap into something to understand, trends and fundamentals and science in that space in order to come up with a better solution that does leverage our core competencies. Yeah, I don't want to sit here and say, well, NotedSource is the panacea or is the be all end all for everything.
You don't mind,
And,
Kofi, do you?
No, I was going to say,
That's fine.
I feel like
It's
we're
fine. Sure it is.
maybe not 100%, but I feel like we can help with maybe 95%.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that I would pick up the phone and call Kofi for, so to speak.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's really interesting. I was meeting with an innovation consulting firm. They do creativity sourcing. Like, what do you do when your own team hasn't gotten like new ideas that want to come to the market? And they put together these fantastic trips to like take tech folk to like South Korea to look at the beauty industry and see how that industry has evolved in South Korea specifically. And then what are the ideas that blossom for tech entrepreneurs or tech companies, or, like just cross-pollinating different industries in ways that they never thought possible. So they might talk to LG while they're there, right? Because that feels comfy, but they'll talk to how LG is tapping into the beauty industry to rethink consumer appliances, let's say. So this is why all of us, right, that we love working in the world of innovation, because like your brain never stops moving.
No,
Totally.
you're absolutely right. I feel like we're working with General Mills, and we did a master class with them where they brought in someone completely outside of consumer packaged goods to present on a totally different field, similar to what you're discussing, just to get the research team's minds thinking about this new space and potentially kind of inspire them in the work that they're doing. So I think it's absolutely right. Sometimes it is good to just think about things from a new perspective and then see how you can implement that in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, it's like way outside the box. Like there are no boxes here kind of thinking, right? Yeah. I'm curious, given both of your experiences, advice you might have for some of our listeners, our innovators who are listening and going, how can I make the most of this? What should I be thinking about? What comes to mind? What lessons learned might you have to share?
So yeah, I'd say as far as like lessons learned, like how can they take advantage? I'd say if they're in a situation where they're having any sort of topic that they've been thinking about, ruminating on for some time, and looking at how do I tackle this issue faster, it's always the adage like trying to identify someone working together can get you there a little faster, or at least get you the right information and the right answer. So I'd say anytime they're working on any sort of topic, any sort of project from an innovation standpoint, again, whether the horizon is I need to understand this next week, right? So at SharkNinja, I'll say like their time frame or time horizon is they need that information as quickly as possible. Or, you have some companies who are developing a new product that is 5 years out. So whether the time horizon's really short or really long, by identifying the right information, you can make better decisions, right? And that helps yourself out from a personal standpoint, but it also helps the organization from a process standpoint in a lot of different ways. So maybe that's how I would describe it, as anytime you have any sort of question from an R&D perspective, and L&D, I don't talk about that as much, but we help L&D teams. This is the way that we can, we're able to support. And Joia, I don't know what you think.
Noted source is a how. We still need a why and a what first. And I think it starts with having an open innovation strategy conversation. Do we have an open innovation strategy? Do we want one? And why? And what kinds of things are we looking for? And what role can open innovation play in helping us achieve our aims? What are the things that are core and or trade secret and holy to us that we don't really need to or want to talk to anyone about? And what are some spaces that are adjacent or that we're growing into where we do really want to get some other points of view? So I would probably start there and then think about what are the holistic innovation capabilities needed to deliver. And yeah, I would want noted source in my Rolodex when I got to that point.
Yeah, no, I think your answer is even more apt. Yeah, I think it's important to have that mindset first and foremost, or at least the desire to have the mindset to engage in open innovation first and foremost. And then once you do, I think then a noted source makes sense for you in terms of accelerating that whole process and streamlining it. But you have to certainly have the mindset of let's do this.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask you guys now as we conclude this lovely conversation, the 3 questions that I ask everyone who comes on the show. What is the greatest innovation of all time?
For me, I'd say if I was to go back, I'd likely say the printing press. And so that's for me, just being able to, as someone who, like I said, who comes from a family of academia, the ability to create literature, to spread it quickly, I think kind of revolutionized everything from a scientific standpoint, from a technology standpoint. So, I mean, it's going way back, but I'd say that's from an innovation standpoint, it's probably one of the biggest. And because I love to read, my family also writes as well. So anything having to do with writing and books is important to me.
Yeah. What about you, Joy? What do you think?
I do have to plug for Kofi's sister. She's an amazing author. One of my favorite books, Homegoings, written by, I hear from him that she's got a new book she's writing, which is awesome. It's funny you say that, Kofi, because in our prep notes, I did not tell you what my answer to this question was. And you know what it is? It's writing. Very similar to what you're saying. And I think that totally changed a lot for the human species, right?
And for storytelling, absolutely.
Ever storytelling, yeah. And then you're talking about capturing it in literature and books. Yes, a big S-curve change for humans.
If you could join any innovation team in history, which team would you join?
Maybe I'll let Joia take that one first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know that it's any. I love that you've asked this to your other guests. So I'm left-handed. And I would have intercepted. Okay. And so are my 2 children. And I would intercept almost every product that frustrates me. So I'm going to go scissors, knives, spiral notebooks. My little kid was drawing on the other night in a spiral notebook. And you got the ballpoint pen that smears. I mean, the 10% of us just have not been represented well on those teams. So that's what I would have done. I'd have showed up to give a point of view on what we need for daily frustration-free living as lefties.
Fantastic. I'm a redheaded left-hander. I think I'm the world's smallest minority. That's what I'd like to say. Justice for gingers. Okay, Kofi, you go.
There you go. I'd say so I went to high school in Huntsville, Alabama. And although Alabama has there's a lot of different perceptions of it. We have NASA there, a lot of engineers. And so, I think growing up there, one of the things I would have loved is participating in one of the Apollo missions. Not as an astronaut, because I'm not that brave, but, anything surrounding that, I think is something innovative and cool to me, having grown up there.
What's the worst that could happen? Come on. I mean, it's fine. So
I'll be on Earth for that.
Yeah. And what is the innovation that the world needs now? Joy, you want to go first?
I think that we need to learn how to combine our intelligence as humans with AI for optimal results. And I think it's hanging in the balance. It's hanging in the balance. And many of us are wrestling with that in our day jobs and in life at home as well. And my wish for is that we figure that seam out and resolve some of the friction there. And I think that innovation will unlock so much for humanity.
Yeah. I think along those lines, I think joining that collective mindset of taking the innovation that we all internally have within us, but then bringing that to not only to AI, but to other people as quickly as possible. I think that ultimately from a human perspective will help us advance as a group, to help us develop new technologies and ultimately grow. So I'd say similar to Joya's answer, it's really bringing everyone's collective insights and experiences together within one platform. NotedSource tries to do that, and I think we've been doing that pretty successfully. But I think on a bigger scale, I think is always great to help us all kind of connect together.
Joia and Kofi, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. If people want to get in touch with you, Joia, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, I'll say LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, that's a good spot. And Kofi, what's the best place for people to get to connect with you?
Yeah, same. I'd say LinkedIn, and then you can also go on just to contact us at notedsource.io and put in anything that you're looking at. But easiest way to reach me is via LinkedIn.
Fantastic.
Susan, I just want to say, like, thank you for hosting these conversations.
Thank you so
Innovation is a
much.
practice, and you are moving us all along with every one of these conversations. So thank you for who you are and what you're doing for innovation as a discipline.
Thank you. Thank you. It is my absolute joy because I get to speak with incredible folks like you. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, guys.